So, hello world. I have never gone live before, so I have no idea if anyone's going to even show up. But if anyone shows up, it's basically the purpose of this whole situation right now is that basically the whole situation here is that I'm working on this Live Aid video and Jack, dude, it's driving me crazy. The issue with Live Aid um and just knowing what I know about Concert for Bangladesh, it always comes down to the fundraising for me and the end goal. Oh, I don't know who's here. Hello, people. There's two people watching. Is one of them my mom? Anyway, I don't know. I'm just here talking about Live Aid right now. And I am working on this project, and I just feel like, it's not the Beatles, it's so overwhelming. And oh, hello. Oh my god, it's Shitpost Botman. Hi. That's one of my patrons. Um, I've just been feeling so overwhelmed with this Live Aid thing. There's so much research. By the way, Jack is right here. So much research involved. And it's the same situation with Concert for Bangladesh when I was working on it that I was thinking, hi, Bob Joe. I was thinking, man, I should be talking about the music. But at the end of the day, it always comes back down to the money. And I am feeling so, because I'm like, I want this to be a happy video, at least a little bit, but it's not going to be. And somebody messaged me the other day and they were like, oh, I love Bob Geldof. And I'm like, I don't know if you're going to love this video then, because I'm learning so much. And it's not about him as a person, it's about this project. And I can't help but go back and compare Concert for Bangladesh, and as much of a failure as that was financially, it was about it was so centered on the Bengali people. Anyway, so basically, if you're here right now, and if you were around for Live Aid, and if it was something that you remember, I want to hear from you. Because I keep running into this thing where it's like, how much of it was about raising money for you, if you remember it? Um, how much of it was even focused on the Ethiopian famine? How much of it did you know about? Because I'm running up against the same thing, and it's hard to criticize something that had such a good, message behind it. And everyone really talks about the end all be all, the takeaway is, oh, these were like once in a lifetime historical performances that changed everybody's mind and everybody's life. YouTube became famous from Live Aid. But wasn't why that shouldn't have been the takeaway, right? But then it's like it's just me sitting here at my desk, wearing slippers. Who the hell am I to say all these things? So anyway, hi people. Hello people. There's 7 people here. I'm shocked. I was just there's something been on my heart lately about maybe you should go live. And I don't know why. So I've never gone live before. This is my first time. So I don't know. I've got Jack right here. He is this is the time of morning when Jack decides that he's going to ruin my life. Where oh my god, it's Angel. Okay, so this is Angel who's in the chat right now, and Angel is my collaborator in this video because Angel has been really emotionally and spiritually attached to Live Aid his whole life. He was 10 when it came out. And so he remembers it vividly, and I actually get the opportunity to occasionally work with someone that I really trust and really love, and Angel's one of those people. And so Angel and I got to do a little bit of an interview, and we're probably going to do a little bit of another interview talking about kind of the cultural vibe of Live Aid. But I got to tell you, you guys, this is so much, these things always wind up being so much heavier than you want them to be, because you wanna be like, "Oh, this was so cool," and just the fact technologically that Live Aid itself happened is so interesting on its own, and I'm sitting there thinking, I could fall apart and spend 45 minutes just on the broadcasting elements of this thing, and that's the problem with me, is that I have no, um, like, ability to pay attention to what people might find interesting. I'm like, "Oh, maybe that's just me." It is. It's always just me. Where I feel like, "Oh, yeah, you should probably focus on, like, the music." But anyway, I printed out the timeline of everyone on Live Aid, and oh, interesting. I believe that the stadium in Philly was condemned shortly thereafter. That's something to look into as well. That's very interesting. I wonder if it was a safe place for people to be performing. Jack, dude, something's gonna happen here, and it's not gonna be a good situation. Jack, buddy. He's like climbing all over the keyboard. But I have all of this. It is a huge list. So it's like, and I found this from a website that was really wonderful. And like these blocks are blocked out for how long people were actually there. So you'll see here where it's like these are what are overlapping and stuff. So anyway, that's going up here. Help is getting taken off the board. So that'll be sad for me, but it's necessary. And you guys know me. If there's a chance to use the board, it's going to be used. Let's take a look at that. Help being removed from the, am I still on? Okay. Let's see, not help. The dude, you've got to stop. I'm looking for the stages and locations. Okay, John F. Kennedy Stadium, JFK Stadium, closing and demolition. 6 days after the 1989 show, it was condemned. Grateful Dead's 1989 show, Mayor Wilson Goode condemned the stadium due to multiple findings by city inspectors that the stadium was structurally unsafe, as well as a potential fire hazard just hours before the concert. Gosh dang. Well, there you go. So let's see. Did anything happen during Live Aid? I wonder if anything happened or if it seemed scary. So there was a lot of like really noteworthy performances there. Let's see. 80, we've got 81 Rolling Stones, 82 Huey Lewis and the Newsdome Jet, The Kinks, 82 Blondie, Journey, The Jacksons. In the last shows were like Rolling Stones and stuff. Okay. All right. So anyway, I know that this is boring, but yeah. Okay. So hey, stop it. I know that this is boring. I'm just talking out loud because I'm feeling very adrift and I'm feeling very like detached from the Beatles, but luckily I was able to do something for the Patreon earlier and I watched the Blackpool 1965 performance. Please don't, Jack. If anything weird shows up in the chat from me, it was him. He was trying to connect with you guys. He's all over the screen. He's all over me right now. Sometimes he likes to lay on me while I'm typing. And it just makes my life impossible. So he's getting his like morning pets in. And yeah, my Live Aid should be done by tonight. Oh, cool. Okay. Okay, that's good. So Angel's doing another video on Live Aid. Live Aid is I've spent I there's it's like two separate situations. It's like there's this huge amazing event and then there's this insane fallout of fundraising and this big question as to whether okay, he saw a bird. This big question as to whether or not fundraising done by rock stars or like public figures actually helps. Yeah, he's hey Alan, he's going for it. Whether or not fundraising by rock stars like actually helps create long-term solutions for people in need and like peoples and communities in need, or if it's just like an immediate situation, and particularly with Live Aid, trying to, um I hated the whole Live Aid production. Been an intense Beatle fan since 1975. Hi, Laura. Hi. So tell me a little bit about why you hated it. I would love to hear it. And Alan has been telling me and speaking with my friend Angel a little bit about his feelings during Live Aid. I'm kind of looking for some vibes, how you were feeling if you were watching it when it went down or thereabouts. What was the vibe on the fundraising end versus the fundraising versus the show? Like, was how was the weight of the Ethiopian famine versus succinctly, it was an immense ego fest. Okay. Okay. All right. Laura's saying some stuff out here. Laura's not messing around. Can everybody hear me okay? Because, like, on the YouTube end, it's saying I'm extremely quiet, but on my microphone, it's saying I'm extremely loud. So if somebody says I'm really quiet, let me know, please. But no, I'm looking for everyone's great. Thanks, Laura. I'm looking for everyone's feelings on Live Aid. If you were watching it, how often were you hearing about hi Hal, thank you. Good to know. I know one of the BBC presenters hated the pop stars. He was more into more underground music. Okay. Okay. Volume is fine, but it's like peaking, glitching. Let's see. Okay. I'm glad they did it really. Okay. Let me know, Botman, if I turned it down a little bit. Let me know if it's high time, Lord Boy. Um, I'm you're glad they did it really, Scott. Okay. So I'm just really curious about the vibe, because this happened 5 years before I was born. Um, and what was interesting to me, I have to say, guys, when I started working, I thought that this was just for AIDS. Like, that's how uninformed I was. I had no dog in this fight. Like, Jack, please don't do something insane over there. Jack, he has no place to jump up, and oh my God, he's tearing down my flags. That's a new one. He saw a bird. He saw a bird. He's got things to do over here. He's busy. He's getting stuff done. Okay. Went to a Beatles writers talk locally. Tell me about that. Could not buy the book, but it was pricey. Okay. That week, my whole church was fully committed to doing this. Oh, interesting. My mom was following it closely, so I'll ask her about this and let you know if she has any insights. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. You can let me know on Patreon. Lars, we never had experienced anything like this. And yeah, absolutely. The fact that it was just a little over 24 hours straight of music. And Angel's one of my collaborators, or my only collaborator on this video. Sometimes I get to do this. He was talking about how he was watching it and talking to his friend and stuff about it. And it's like the time difference was kind of crazy, like watching the sun go down, watching things and being like, well, the sun's still up here. It's just like such a weird, crazy global phenomenon. It was called A Little Help of My Friends. Okay. Do you know who it was by? Time Lord Boy went to a writer chat. A Little Help of My Friends. Book. Stuart McConey. Does that sound familiar? Never heard of this person. It was a book by people. Okay. The Ringo book is called Ringo with a Little Help. Yep. Okay. I'll take a look at it. Was it good? Was it interesting? Interesting Beatle chat? I never get to go to these events because they don't really, where I live, it's kind of not, we're a flyover state. Does that make sense? Like, it's not that fun. So, people don't really come here, but when I get the chance to, I would love to. I just haven't yet. So, but I get to see Ringo in September. So that's going to be no internet in those days. 1 hour of rock music a day if you were lucky. LOL, 48 hours nonstop. Bloody hell. That was mind blowing. Yeah, especially if you're one of those people who had access to cable watching MTV and stuff in the US side. He was well informed, seemed not as keen on songwriter, don't know why. Well, I guess that does happen sometimes. It's hard when you're paying attention to certain writers and you see very obvious bias. I have a hard time with that. See more of a see, I okay. Let's pause on Live Aid real. Let's talk about this. I am so tired of seeing this shit. I deleted my Twitter account. I needed to do something that was better for me, and I was spending too much time there, and I deleted my Twitter. Got rid of it. I'm on Instagram. This is Lars Land on Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky. I don't use it very much, but I did delete my Twitter. And I'm pretty like active here on my community tab. I post probably too much, but then I have like a lot of really active of you guys. You guys get a hold of me. Okay, back to this. I need to talk shit real quick. We'll get back to Live Aid about people who are Beatle authors, not just like Paul authors or John authors. Seriously, you guys have to work harder about at least disguising if you appreciate Paul or John more. At least try. Like, I have to try because I think I've spent more time with Paul than I do with John. So I have to work harder to like make sure that my coverage is equal, right? Because if my coverage isn't equal of both of them, and it's hard with John because obviously John was taken from us at 1980. So the amount of work and conversation that Paul's had, interviews, books that we've had from Paul, we don't get all of this stuff from John. I mean, our most noteworthy interviews from John are the Playboy interviews and Lennon Remembers, which is a Rolling Stone interview. That's basically 1970 and 1980, and then a bunch of kind of difficult ones. Jean jackets. I am familiar with the phrase jean jackets. The older kind of boomer fans, yes, I'm aware of them. I am very familiar with them. They hang out in my comment section. MTV didn't come to Australia until 1987, so this was incredible. Interesting. It's very yeah, Twitter was a messy place, so that's why I left. I spent too much time there. Boomer Lennon revisionists. I see a lot of it. And I think I don't see it so much like in my comment section. I just see it a lot in the books, and it drives me nuts. I just think we got to at least try. And if like if you're writing if your subject matter like mine is focused on the four of them, you've got to work really hard to try to keep it equal. And if you're a fan of one of them more so than the other, John and Paul, then you need to work harder to overcome your fandom for the like that means you got to dig into if you're a Paul boy, you got to dig into John. You got to really dig into John and work on that, you know, and like find the places that you like and find all that shit. Like leave Paul aside for a minute and work on that. Hi, Richard. This is my first live. I'm super nervous. So, yeah. Yeah, we really don't know where John would have gone. And so we have to work harder to get to know what we have. And unfortunately, with John having being left, I have Beatles Forever. I think, hang on. I think I have it. This one? Schaffner? But if the topic/info isn't available between the four, then it is what it is. Yeah, absolutely. And we're lucky because things continue to be covered with them. But I think it's interesting because I've been really appreciative of a lot of the Beatles inner circle. I think that they can be pretty candid. Yep. This is Beatles Forever by Nicholas Schaffner. It's really interesting. This is a really like considering when this came out, 1978. kind of back before the Beatles reboom of after John dying. It's really good compilation. Let's see what we got. For years, I was mostly a fan of Paul, but now I appreciate all four. But if the topic isn't, yeah, it's it's hard. It's hard to like. I would say that solo music wise, and since this is a live, um, and that like a lot of people won't see it, I can just say this: like solo music wise, George is like the music that I appreciate the most, and it's hard to say with Paul because, geez, that guy has put out so much music that it's like it gets to a point where it's sometimes white noise. Ringo, I really appreciate, but it's a different type of situation. The Hunter Davies book was possible to find in the 70s. Interesting. William, I go to for John for lyrics and George for his philosophy. I feel like they had different things to offer. They're very different, all four of them with music. And Ringo, of course, this year being able to finally have his first number one. He really, really has always loved that Western vibe. So it didn't surprise me when it did so well. He just always very much fits in that vibe. I got the Davies book for my 18th birthday from a fellow fan. I don't own it, physical copy. I own the digital copy. Out of all of your Beatles books, guys, what is the one that had the most impact on you? Or, or what is the one that you like the most or like are most excited to own? Living the Beatles Legend by Kim. Yes, I really like the Living the Beatles Legend, Kenneth Womack, Mal Evans book. I like Kenneth Womack a lot. He is a Beatles historian. He's a real historian and he's a scholar. He teaches. And I have his George Martin book right here and another George Martin book over here. The most interesting one is The Longest Cocktail Party. That is about Apple Corps. That is a crazy one. Since John and George have the most limited, yes, I have, Marcus. I have listened to all of John and George's just solo discography. I have not listened to all of Paul's. Sorry, I haven't. I try to get around some. I've listened to all of Ringo's too. It's just that Paul, I get confused sometimes. Like you wind up finding, you'll be looking through stuff and then you'll wind up in a compilation album. And then I'll be like, man, I really want to listen to this song. And then I'll go back to Ram. I need to be better about it. But I do tend to focus so much time on the four of them that I don't listen to solo very much. I spend so much time, if I'm going to be frank, like my most time spent solo, I don't think that this is that surprising, is on George. I just prefer his music the most. Paul, I always dismissed. He wrote love songs. I admit now he's prolific more than the rest of them. Paul is the most, I think, he's the most varied out of all of them in a lot of ways. People think, oh, he only wrote love songs, but he wrote some weird shit too. like he was willing to try some stuff and he got a lot of flack for it too. And good for him, you know? Good for him trying some stuff. But Paul tried. Okay. Oddly enough, I enjoyed the Paul book that Barry Miles wrote. I love Barry Miles' Paul book. That's probably obvious if you've watched any of my videos. Barry Miles turns up a lot. The Love You Make was a bit sleazy. See, okay, The Love You Make by Peter Brown and Stephen Gaines. They are messy. They are so messy. It's extremely sleazy. But if you listen to, or if you read, oh my God, the companion one that just came out last year, Peter Brown, Stephen Gaines. All You Need Is Love, that came out last year. It is transcripts of the interviews. Now, if you're reading that, they definitely edited those. Like you see cut. There's pretty obvious cuts. And Clive Epstein didn't make it into the book. And I know on good authority, because this actually came from Stephen Gaines, that Peter didn't want to put him in there. So The Love You Make has good, but it has its flaws and errors. The conversation surrounding Ringo not playing like at all at the end is such a big issue for me because The Love You Make, it's a fun read, and there are parts that are so accurate and so important. Like specifically when we're talking about domestic violence, which was my most recent video, and I couldn't use The Love You Make because it is so salacious that I couldn't use it because it's not credible. But he talks about how John would twist Cynthia's arm or like pinch her and stuff. This is stuff I couldn't put in the put in my video because I didn't have any backup sources on it, and therefore I couldn't put it in. But these are things that we kind of saw enough about that it wouldn't be it's not impossible. I mean, you could see out of all of the things that John did and just credible from John himself, you know, saying that these things happened. Let's see, The Love You Make is good, has airs since Revolver has been my favorite. Okay. Yeah, I just read Beatles 66 by Steve Turner. Steve Turner's a good one. Paul was very goofy. Hunter Davis seems to have a personal grudge against Paul. Hunter Davies, I'm confused about him. I have a hard time forgiving the man for publicizing this personal conversation between him and Paul, and like that conversation, considering when it was happening, what it was about, it was so fucked up for him to share things that John or that he was talking about post John dying. And it was just a lot of things that Paul was working out. And I don't think that it was smart of him to talk to Hunter specifically, but I just will never be able to forgive that. It's not very cool. It's not very cool. Have you ever seen sources? Okay. Have I ever seen? I've heard this story a bunch of times about Paul cutting up or John cutting up clothes about of the girl that Paul was hooking up with in Hamburg. That being said, I haven't read about it recently, so I couldn't tell you where I've seen sources of it. Um, I'm gonna do a video on Backbeat at some point, so that would be Hamburg related. Um, so I guess if I can find it, I'll put it in there. If not, then I'll say that I couldn't find it. I'm pretty sure it was in the Paul McCartney, Philip Norman book, but I don't like to source that guy unless if I have another one. John, even more, yeah, he was an extreme, yeah, you're right, Richard. John was an extremely conflicted person. He had a difficult time. He had a difficult time, and we can all understand that. It was an anthology. Okay, so it was an anthology. Interesting. Hang on. Do you know if it was in the book at all? Give me a sec. Let's take a look. Let's take a look, see. I don't know what I'm gonna look for to find this. The clothes thing. Okay. Somebody commented on one of my most recent videos, "Why are you always out of breath?" And I'm like, "'Cause I'm excited. I don't know what to tell you." 'Cause I'm talking and nobody else is talking with me. The Silver Anthology book was gold. Yes, I have it over here somewhere. Let's see. Clothes. Right. Let's see, clothes. Cut suburban voice for what clothes I wanted. I'm looking for John cutting clothes, Butlins. I just got the Jesus. There's so much stuff in here. I I never read anthology cover to cover, like one in a couple of days. It took me some time to get through it, so I tend to forget. What is your opinion on the What is your opinion on the Shout biography? Philip Norman's biography? Trash. But see, it's an important document, right? Because it shows where the public was with the Beatles at the time. But it's trash because it's not accurate, and it's so unfair to Paul. Glenn A. Baker's book on the 1964 called The Beatles Down Under was very graphic in the sex they had. Okay. Okay, maybe it might be one of you guys because it was a name I recognized, and there's a lot of people I recognize in here. Was one of you guys the one who told me in the George, um, in the George and Paul book when I brought up the 4442 conversation, and I said, "I wish that we had a transcription of that entire conversation." Somebody said that that it was in one of the books, and they wrote the title. I had a screenshot of it, and it's gone. I feel like it was Scott Taylor. Does anybody know who that was? If you know, let me know. Um, by the way, if you guys are on Instagram, you can always DM me on Instagram. I'll see it. It's This Is Lars Land. I will only not respond if you're being a creep. While John had a dark path when it came to women, yeah, John was, what's her name? The German bartender, and she was plus sized. He loved her. Yeah, he was such a sweetie to her. I'm trying to figure out I want to find out what that bit from John or Paul John cutting up Paul's girlfriends, or like girlfriends, like hookups clothes. Somebody said it was an anthology. If it's an anthology, I'll find it. See, I didn't read Anthology, the book, cover to cover. It took me some time to get through it because it took me some time. It probably took me 6 months to get through it because I would put it down and start working on something else. And it is a tome. The one that I did read, like surprisingly and kind of impressively cover to cover, was this, because it's so big. But then there are some ones that are really easy to read cover to cover. Like I Me Mine is an extremely easy cover to cover read because a lot of it's like this. You see what I'm saying? It's short. I try not to open it too much because we're screwed. Like we're so screwed. Let's see. I have not listened to Another Kind of Mind podcast, but if I'm going to break my like not hanging out with, not watching or listening to creators stuff, it's going to be that one because they've covered Mark Lewison pretty heavily. When We Was Fab inside the Beatles Australian tour. Okay, so there was a Beatles Australian tour book that I got. No, it was 8 Days a Week. Here we go. 8 Days a Week by Graham Hutchins, the Beatles tour of 1964. It is so fun. It's a pain in the ass. Are you talking about I Me Mine? Or not I Me Mine. Miles, Barry Miles, hard to read. You know what is straight up the hardest book to read? Straight up. I swear to God. And Alan Clayton brought this up, but it not only is the lyrics hardback heavy, but like these are hard to get out and back in. It doesn't look like it, but these are so annoying. It's so annoying. Okay, so when we're talking about accessing Beatles books, because I know it's hard, you guys are talking about stuff that it's like things that are hard to find. I would definitely be, if you're in the US, if you have options, go to like thriftbooks.com, abebooks.com. Always look for the used, but also be sure to check out archive.org. Make an account. I donate to archive.org. I also archive. Okay. I'm awake. Half Price Books, I go to Half Price Books in person. That's where I got my May book, my Loving John book. I lost my mind. I was so happy. Um, that's where I got my Nicholas Schaffner Beatles Forever book. Um, I get a lot of stuff at Half Price Books, and we go through so many books and like physical media in this house that we're always bringing stuff in and switching it out. The only things that never go back out are Beatles books. I've never gotten rid of one because why would I? Um, she was apparently issues. One time, Paul had a chick in bed, and John came in and got a pair of scissors and cut all of her clothes to pieces and then wrecked the wardrobe. Okay, let me search for scissors. Let me see if I can find it. It's not working for me right now. I gotta say, I don't really hear Paul as an angel. I think maybe okay, people pigeonholing the Beatles in general is a great flaw in the community, etc. Paul is an angel, John is evil, that bit of nonsense. I don't hear Paul as an angel very much, but then I feel like my what I hear is so inaccurate now. Like for the not inaccurate. We're accurate, but inaccurate for the like public perception because I'm surrounded by so many very knowledgeable people and my comment section is full of not okay, I see it all the time on TikTok. I don't have TikTok. Thank God I never got into it, never will. Marcus, yeah, Paul could be mean sometimes and sometimes devious in his Paul can be mean now, probably. Paul could be mean until Paul is not nice at times. Let's not forget the way that they would talk about how Paul and George would gang up together against other people. They would be bitchy. Like if somebody pissed one of them off and they decided to band together that day, it wasn't something you wanted to be around. Um, and I think that probably the that attitude of like only I can talk shit about my person. That was something that was very true, especially for John toward the others, but very true even for Paul and George when they weren't getting along. So I think and Paul's 1980 interviews were not the kindest to anybody. He was I don't know, he was feeling some stuff. I don't know, maybe not. That's a little too generalization, but I've seen some meaner ones from Paul. A lot of people hate Paul, blaming him for nonsense. Yeah, okay, like his first public reaction to John's death when he was clearly in shock. If I were to levy a big criticism against Paul, he's always been tight with money. Paid wings guys, union scale. Now that you're so right, Laura. Laura is so right there. Now, Paul should not have paid any of his session guys, anyone, anything but top dollar. You have the money. You have the money. You should pay them well. They deserve to be paid well. Mal Evans being paid basically minimum wage until he died, having money issues and having to go to George and ask for money. It's an absolute outright shame. If I could go back into the 60s and talk to the boys, that's what I would talk to them about is paying the guys well. A lot of people okay, so James says, "A lot of people hate Paul, blaming him for nonsense like his first public reaction." So let's talk about that real quick. People are really mean about that first reaction. Uh, I don't know. I think he was literally in shock. And it what else would you expect from the vultures that are paparazzi after John was murdered, not just died, but murdered, and him saying, "Drag, isn't it?" He's just thinking like, "I gotta get out of this situation." Um, I don't think he was really thinking about what what anything meant, you know? Um, like Paul supposedly played starting over alone in his studio over and over for like the first couple of months. The 80s were not kind to yeah, the 80s were not kind to Paul. That is true. That is true. The 80s were not kind to Paul. Elvis Costello said of Paul, nobody knows what it was like to be him during all that stuff. I just can't imagine. I don't know. I have a real soft spot for them, for all four of them, but especially Paul during that time. I don't know why I started like I feel like when I first got into the Beatles, that was something I had an immediate soft spot for Paul about. I always felt like, shit, he's just been treated so poorly. My thing with that interview is that Paul had literally come. Okay, so I don't care. My thing with that interview is that Paul literally had all day to come up with something better to say. It's not like they grabbed Paul in the morning time. He shouldn't have been thrown off guard. Oh, I'm sorry. Who cares? Like that, I don't care. I don't care, that he had all day to come. Do you think he was thinking about that all day? Sorry, Marcus, I'm not trying to be a cunt about this, but, like, that's not what he was thinking about was what's gonna look good in the press. That is not what he was thinking about. And to minimize it, to say that that's what he should have come up with is so dehumanizing and minimizing, and I don't like that shit. Sorry, I'm not trying to be a total bitch about it, but you guys know me. You guys know that I'm kinda mean. Like, it's that I don't care. You know, Scott says, I'm amazed he kept his cool. I would have told the press where to go." Me too. Me too. And, when my opinion is that it took losing Linda for Paul to understand how to grieve. And even then, yes, Laura, you're so correct. I think, he really he obviously had his, you know, rebound marriage to Heather. But after that, I think it took several years for him to figure it out. I think he may have been subconsciously angry with John for being killed. Yes. I think so too. It's okay to be angry and grief. I think he was pissed at John. Come on, man. We were supposed to get back together, man. Paul didn't know any. Yeah. Angel says, Paul didn't know anybody, anything on that day. You are so accurate. I do. Time Lord Boy says, I do hate how Paul and John treated George. Felt they never treated George his worth, and they didn't. You are correct. And it took, I mean, John was already gone by the time he would have realized how bad he fucked up. And Paul luckily had a chance to figure that out before George died. But I mean, it took them far too long. It took Paul far too long to figure out how poorly he actually treated George. Isn't that sad? It's hard because conversations around feelings and credit and all those things, like, they're things that we're comfortable with like conversing about now that they weren't comfortable with, and it's just a different time. And I don't want to forgive it, by saying like, "Oh, it was just a different time," but it is hard. Um but like to say that George was un unrightfully bitter would be inaccurate. Yeah, okay, Alan says, "You want the inside story about how Paul felt about the loss of John? Listen to Here Today." Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you want the inside story of how Paul feels about John, you can listen to any freaking interview he's had in the last 10 years. People won't even ask about John, and he'll start talking about John. It's like, dude, what people have to understand is that Northern men of their generation were never taught them how to grieve and show emotion. And I agree with Lars. Poor Paul must have felt crazy learning that news. It must have felt crazy. I mean, and yeah, I think we do need to take into consideration. There was something that I think I wish I would have said in the domestic violence video that I did say in the White Album video, that Cynthia talks about how she saw Mimi be like really aggressive and violent toward John, where these are really like literally learned behaviors. And not talking about feelings and just kind of brushing it off, that's literally a learned behavior. And stopping and like discussing and communicating, that's not something that was approved then. That was something that would be like very, we saw John in Get Back where he's like, "Oh, come on, girls. Like, it's girly, it's feminine, it's not okay." But George was sometimes passive aggressive from my perspective towards the two. Each of them had their sometimes, Man, the boy was so passive aggressive, and he talk about someone who cannot let go of a grudge. I mean, if I was talking about Paul having bad interviews, my God, George had bad interviews in the 80s. I remember, if anybody knows what interview this is, because I don't, it was a woman interviewing, it was a woman questioning, and she said something like, "Question, question, question, John," and he goes, "Lennon?" Bro, bro. Yeah. Look at poor John, his insane laughing at poor Stewart's death. It's a sign of keeping emotions inside. Yeah. The guys just really didn't learn how to have conversations. And something that really will come up in my Ringo video is that Ringo, he didn't understand the like enormity of what was hidden beneath until he got sober in 1989. He said, like, realizing all of the things that he had kind of, like, pushed aside and never talked about, and all kinds of feelings, he was like, "Oh my god," and it's stuff that we at least okay, so I'm 34. I'm about to turn 35 next month. Um, so, like, the stuff that I had conversations surrounding growing up, just, like, being considerate and trying to think things through and stuff, general stuff that was, like, taught in school, this is stuff that you would never do, and just the the concept of, like, hugging a guy was not cool. I didn't care much about George comments either. I didn't see much of John anyways in response to John's death. I always thought George's response to John's death was much more in the way that he saw things spiritually, which was like he never viewed death physically, always spiritually. So to him, it wasn't the end of John. I never knew Ringo had such a tough childhood until I heard of sickness. Ringo, it's crazy because Ringo was about to get out of the hospital after I think about 8 months, and then he was reaching over to show his, like, bunkmate something and tore all of his stitches, had to re-stitch, and he was in there for another 8 months. Like, his poor guy. I mean, can you imagine how frustrating that'd be? He was, like, 13 at that point. I'd be so pissed. I'd be so pissed. They all came out of World War II. Everyone around them was suffering from PTSD. The parents, the teachers. My teacher was completely insane, but he was there trying to teach us. Yeah. It's great hearing you talk about them in real time. It all comes alive. Ugh. I like that spiritual part of George's comments. It's just the comments that mention, yeah. It's tough when I really don't think that we can base the Beatles' reaction on John's death, like, when it happened at all. The only one that makes the most sense to me was Ringo showing up. That one I understand where he said, "Well, what else do? You turn up." And Ringo having the most, like, the most understanding of John and Yo and being able he had such a good relationship with all 3 of them, that it just didn't matter. And good for him, Lars, do you feel George and Ringo were less nostalgic about their childhood in Liverpool? I feel George and Ringo were more realistic. Yep. So, um, Ringo has pissed off Liverpool a lot of times. Um, because he one time, I think he one time likened Liverpool to, like, Straight Out of Compton, and that didn't make Liverpool very happy. And whereas the other boys, their childhood homes are, historically saved or, you know, uh, I don't know what the terminology is over there. I know what it is over here, like, it would be under the historic district and stuff like that. His isn't, his first one. It's, like, condemned. I don't know if it still is or if it's been, demolished or whatever. But Ringo has done a really good job of pissing off Liverpool. And he said, straight out of Liverpool, there you go, Hal, thanks. Um, he would say that it was a, like a dark, dreary place, and George said, like, that his home, it was, like, damp, it was wet, it sounds like a very fun place to hang out, so it probably wasn't quite as happy, but then again, George's family was really close and therefore happy, but Ringo had he grew up far poorer, and all of them grew up, I mean, Mindips, John was, like, middle class, sort of, but it was the only reason why they made it go was because, Mimi had renters, or boarders, whatever you guys call them there. But guys back in the 1950s and 60s were told not to wear their emotions on their sleeves. You kept that stuff bottled up. You didn't hug. At the end of, Get Back episode 1 where they hugged, you didn't do that. You did not hug your friends, which seems crazy to me. So it's just like, I'm born, 30 years after, 40 years after, and it's something my friends and I hug, my family and I hug. Whereas, I think it was very much a handshake type situation, even with Paul's family, and he was extremely close with his family. But back to the conversation around Paul being tight with money, Francie Schwartz, who has credibility issues. Yes, John hugged Paul after receiving an MBE award. No, was it an MBE award? What was it? It's funny because he hugs him and then he's like, but it's not Blackpool. I don't think it's Blackpool, but it might have been. Let's see. Let me look. Give me just a second. John. Nope. Don't do this to me. NME, sorry, not MBE. NME Poll Winners Concert 1965. Where was that? Does anybody know where that was? NME Poll Winning Concert 1960. Oh, nope, wrong place. 1966 was held at Wembley's. Where is this? I don't know where it was. I'm trying to find it. It says that it was at Wembley, Empire Pool in Wembley. So, yes, John did hug him, which you can tell in that little clip where Paul was like kind of taken aback. Okay, let's see. I love Paul's recounting of the last time he saw George alive. I love that there's this interview. I'm trying to think of what it was. It was for the 8 Days a Week documentary coming out. So that was the press tour, but it's him and Ringo, and he holds Ringo's hand to show how he was doing it. And Ringo just let him hold his hand until Paul was done talking. It didn't bother him one bit. And now Paul and Ringo are just adorable. I love that Paul, like, for Ringo's 70th birthday, when he surprised him and played Happy Birthday, he's like, I'm gonna kiss you on your forehead and kiss you on your cheek. I'm gonna kiss you on your forehead, kiss you on your cheek. Like, it's just, they're just like, who cares? We're just gonna love each other now, you know? And I think it's very lovely. I'm very glad that they have such a great relationship now. And I think a lot of people saw this, but on Ringo's birthday, Paul called in during the kind of festivities, and it was Macca in the contact, Mac space Macca. It's funny. I like to think that they FaceTime each other every once in a while, which I'm sure they don't, but I just like to think that they do. I also like to think, if you guys want to know the dumbest conspiracy that Lars Land buys into, that has no no basis in reality, obviously, it's that John's ghost trips him on stage. Just like to think that I just think it's funny. Okay, Nose Chain says, I also, if you're talking about a nose chain from nostril to nostril like this, so cute, love it. Um, Paul may be a musical savant, but it seems like he had difficulties with social intuition beyond a superficial charming level. Yes, he seemed to unintentionally offend a lot of people. I agree. I saw in the George Harrison Living in the Material World documentary, which for some reason I always say lip mew. Stupid. I really thought it was interesting. Astrid's talking about, she's kind of talking about the boys, and she didn't talk about Ringo, obviously, during this section, but she says, you know, Paul was very polite, like schoolboy, just asking, "Oh, what's this about? What's this about?" He came off as fake. And, I don't know if he thought he was being fake or not, but a lot of people viewed him that way. And then you can kind of see in some more candid spots, and luckily, I mean, I'm gonna bring up Get Back a lot, but in more kind of candid spots, um, of Get Back, it's like, "Oh, yeah, that would've pissed me off too," you know? But then if you go look in my George Paul, video comments, I get a lot of feedback from, musicians talking about what it was like making music and how they could when they were watching it, they could really relate to Paul in dealing with, more difficult band members and how they just like wanted to throttle them. So that was an aspect that I, didn't know very much about. John's ghost. Terrence says, John's ghost. I remember some static during a Paul interview and Paul giving thumbs up to John's ghost. He says, "Yeah, leave it. That's Paul. That's John. He's there. Hi, John Love." Guess Paul has more academic hopes than the others and would show it off as much as possible. Actually, I'm pretty sure. Wait, did George get one? No, it was Paul. Yeah. George did really bad in school, actually. All of them did. Of course, Ringo didn't learn how to read until he was a little bit older, but then wound up reading just as much as he read every single day on tour. He would read everything. I bet he still does. He read everything, anything anybody could put in front of him. I think one of my favorite Ringo quotes during an interview is like, "I can read pretty much any word." He's so funny. He's so sweet. I just have such a little love for him. I always kind of, root for the underdog in a way. So, we north of England guys hug a lot after coming out of a pub. Yeah, that'll do it. I think the falling out of between George and John stems from the fact that George was willing to do anything for John when it wasn't quite reciprocated. May counts a 1974 incident between the two. Do you buy what John Okay, so first off, I agree with Marcus talking about May's recount of that story where, um, George came to visit them in Los Angeles, and George was trying to talk to him, and he said, "Take off your glasses." So John takes off sunglasses and puts on his real glasses, and he takes off those glasses too, and he says, "I wanna see your eyes," like, threw his glasses down and was like, "I did everything you asked of me. I did everything," and then the next day, um, George goes up to May and he's like, "Sorry, I got a little grumpy." I know. Okay. So do you buy what Yoko said that John fancied Paul and Paul did not? No, it Lars. So I don't want to I think that their relationship is too hard to answer in a live stream. I think that they had complicated feelings around each other. Um and I don't think that it was I don't know if I wanna say that Paul didn't know it. Apparently, Paul used to call Paul okay, apparently John used to call Paul John's princess in the Apple Building. A lot of people, made fun of the way that they both talked about each other. I think it was more mutual than the public likes to, um, what's the word? Like, uh, um, what's the word? Oh my god. Like, when the public scrutinizes their relationship, I think it was more mutual, just in a different way. The way that "Hey, hi," saying hello back, "It's good to see you too, this is my first live." I think that their relationship was a lot more reciprocated than people will say that it was very much like a jilted lover situation with John loving Paul more, and I think people just don't understand their relationship very well, including myself. Um, definitely definitely feel they had a bromance, as they would say these days. I think bromance is minimizing it as well. I just think that it's very something happened between them in India. I don't think that India was a romance related situation. I think that India was a kind of a realization on Paul's part that the Beatles were never going to be the way that he wanted them to be again, and it was heartbroken. What is it, John Love, Blue Meanies? Yeah. Um, let's see. I love the story of George's father belting teacher after he gave him a nasty cut. Yes. George's dad got really pissed off when George got a little bit of corporal punishment in school, and he went down and went off on the teacher. Some have cited the trip to USA to promote the Apple as the shift in Paul and John's relationship. Now, that trip was really messy because that was the trip of the dirty weekend when Paul invited Linda, and John did not like that Linda was involved in that trip. And we see a lot of jealousy there. And I think, I think Paul was trying to find, like, I think Paul was searching for kind of a similar, connection to a woman that he felt John and Yoko had, just couldn't find it, you know? There was even an incident, 1967, after an acid trip. Yeah, okay, so where they where the boys, took acid together and they stared in each other's eyes and said, "I know, I know, I know," over and over together. Not a bromance, but a brotherhood. I was thinking of this because in this, I feel like still doesn't explain it well enough, but I'm a huge Billie Eilish fan. And Billie Eilish makes all of her music with her brother, Phineas. And their relationship as brother and sister is so remarkable. I think that when they're talking about how they support each other, it's the way that a lot of people wish that they could um, verbalize how they feel about the most important people in their lives. And, one thing I've noticed where when Billy will, like, adjust her monitor or something, be a little, like, I don't know, about something, Phineas will look at her and, like, he'll catch where she's at, and there's a communication, a little bit of a telepathy that I think is probably true for a lot of musicians, but it's something that I don't see in a lot of musicians the same way that I see in Billy, that I see with the Beatles. So something about these weird, very good musicians. When you're playing, rehearsing with other musicians, unenthusiasm is one of the most difficult things to deal with. I cannot imagine. I feel John never did anything by halves. Yep. He would really hate you and love you at some point very strongly. I cannot imagine being on the other end of John Lennon's, ire, or on the other end of his love. If you go and look at his cards, like his first Christmas cards to Cynthia, they just, like, have drawing of, him and Sin, and then it's like, "I love you, I 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 love you." I think his love could be so intense that it had to be petrifying at times. Take another sip of water here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. They were tough. They were tough to deal with. Can you imagine? Sometimes I feel like Ringo probably just wanted to jump out a window. Like, he was probably just like, "I'm done," you know? I've been watching the recent Oasis concert, and it's interesting to see the body language between Liam and Noel. I imagine it's incredibly difficult to have a real brother in your band. Yeah, you know what? I think I haven't watched a whole lot. I've just seen bits of Oasis, of the recent Oasis concerts, but there is, an interview with Zach, and he says, when he's talking about going on tour with them, and he said, "They haven't been arguing, sorry guys," like they get along great, sorry guys. I think, there's so much in between when things are really bad, that the sensational aspects of making music and touring and stuff will always be the most famous, you know? I just can't imagine. My brother and I get along really well, but my family, owns a business where they go around and it's really mostly nonprofit type stuff, but they go and teach kids how to work with computers and do a lot of robotics and stuff, and I worked with them. My mom and my brother and I get along. We're very much like the Three Musketeers and stuff, but when I was working with them, it was not a good situation, and once I left the business, it was much better, you know? But they work well together. So, like, if you think of, oh my gosh, what is their this is crazy that I can't think of their name. The Proclaimers. Those are 2 brothers that got extremely famous. They still play together. The Proclaimers, I love them so much. That was early on, I was gonna do a video about them. One of the Oasis brothers met George apparently. Liam and Noel were pleased to meet George. Yeah, I bet. Can you imagine what it was like to meet your idol? That video of Ozzy meeting Paul is very sweet. I love Ozzy. I love Black Sabbath, and I love Ozzy a lot, and I love that I didn't, I was into Sabbath before I was into the Beatles, and so, but I didn't get into the bands the way that I get into the Beatles now, and so, yeah, George said he didn't like them very much. George is George didn't give a shit. He said a lot of stuff, didn't he, at the end? Um but seeing that video of Ozzy, if you haven't seen it, go look up Ozzy meeting Paul for the first time. He's, like, shaking. George didn't like anyone. Yeah, that's kinda true. I noticed Liam makes a point of hugging Noel at the end of the show. Now, back in 1996, you would have never seen that. Yeah. I think it's a nice touch. I've been obsessed with the Oasis reunions. The scenes outside of the venue they played is wild. One of my, friends is like a Beatles short form creator. She makes like TikToks and reels and stuff, and she did a Beatles video, and she was wearing an Oasis shirt, and people got mad at her for that, and I'm like, "You guys need to chill." Like, we're talking about 30-year-old type beef. Come on, relax. People are allowed to like more than one band. Lars, George is just a typical northern guy, does not mince his words. Yeah, George, I mean, he was always quite eloquent, but he just didn't care about making people feel comfortable. Fair enough, neither do I. If somebody could let me know how to do that. He reminds me of the older guys I grew up with. Yeah, I could see that. It's interesting. You kind of wonder, like, how things would have changed if we still had both of them here. We're going to see the Got Back tour. It was a lot. Dude, the Got Back tour tickets, good lord. I'm in a band with my brother, thankfully we get along. Yeah, that's gotta help a lot. Did anybody get, Paul tickets without breaking the bank? And if you did you use a credit card and or did you sell your firstborn? It would have been interesting to see John's reaction to Oasis. Liam literally made himself look like a John. I'm sure John would have liked it to a degree, at least if anything for the imitation and the flattery. I don't know how he would have felt about the music. It depends. I don't know how he would have felt about Britpop. John likes rock and roll so much that it's hard to know what he would have felt. Too expensive. Thankfully, I've already seen Paul 3 times. I haven't seen Paul at all, but I'm seeing Ringo in September. It was 175 in Nashville for Nosebleed. Baby, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. He liked new wave too, though, so who knows? The same he felt as about punk rock in the late 70s. It's hard to know with John because he might feel something one day and then he might feel completely differently the next day. John could not get his mind straight at all. He's kind of like me. If you ask me what my favorite Beatles song is today, don't ask me tomorrow. Although it has been Savoy Truffle for several months now. So, oh, somebody asked me the other day, and I wound up deleting the post because it was about the White Album hitting 4th, and the top 3 of my videos are so high view that they're all anomalous, like, so hitting 4th makes it the number 1 of my videos, basically, and I was so excited, and somebody commented, like, "Why does this video mean so much to you? Like, why do you like it so much?" And I was like, "What do you mean, why do I like it so much?" You know, for the people that it still blows my mind that people watched the White Album video all the way through. Um, a lot of people broke it up into chunks, and I'm like, "You're crazy for even finishing it. Like, you're insane. I can't believe I finished it." Um, like, I've never watched the entire thing at normal speed. I've never straight through, I've never done it. Um, you're kidding me. $28,700 to see Paul for Front Row in New Orleans? $28,000? You guys, this is not okay. Scalper tickets, I'm assuming? That's gotta be scalper. Saw Paul at Wrigley Field in 2011. The most we paid was 75 bucks. Mom and I were gonna go see Stevie Nicks, the day before my birthday next month, and not kidding, oh my gosh. And, Stevie's tickets for nosebleeds. Now, that being said, we'd be buying them very late in the game, but Stevie's tickets were $400, so we decided to wait. Um, I paid $35 to see him in 1989. I hope we get George's film. They talk about his films they did with Monty Python. George's sto the story of George and his history with film and filmmaking, that's a video. That's a video. Who will watch it? No one, but I would like to make that video. Someday I will make that video. I don't remember what I was talking about before. It's gone. It's gone. I heard a cat in the other room and I got confused. Ozzy said my family knows what to get me for a present. Any Beatles crap. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because the Osbournes did a podcast and Jack was like, "I'm not a Beatles fan. Not that I don't respect their legacy and what all they've done. I'm just the music has never been for me. And I don't care if you don't like the Beatles as long as you respect their legacy, that's fine. You might bring in some Python fans. I might. I got to see a live Broadway Python show. How much did Beatles tickets cost in 1964? Oh, I was about to talk about Francie Schwartz. Okay. Well, let me answer the 64 thing. So, I couldn't tell you exact amounts, but the 64 or 60 one of the Hollywood Bowl shows, it was 3, 4, and $5. So, you wrote in for them, and then you would give in, like, I'm assuming a money order or something, and then whatever your tickets, um whatever ticket you got, if you got one, you'd get a refund. So anyway, let's see here. Okay. So I was gonna talk about Francie. Okay, so Francie credibility wise, don't know. Okay, we're just gonna will I watch okay, hang on. Let me get through the Francie thing real quick. Credibility, but her one time she went back and saw the McCartney family with Paul, and Paul got super wasted and kind of freaked out, and then afterward, they walked out and Paul had, like, a meltdown on the sidewalk, and he was like, "It's always about the money. All they want from me is money. All they want from me is money." And it was something that was a really fucked with Paul, money, and, it changes I think that in itself is, like, a topic that I don't know how I could make it a video, but it is a really interesting aspect of Paul McCartney. Okay, let's see. The bartender was named Bettina. You're correct. Okay. Um, so someone says Shea Stadium was 575 according to my stub. Okay. So Beatles tickets were around $3 to $5. Will I watch the Beatles films when they come out? I don't know because I feel like I should, but I feel very grumpy about them right now. The Beatles biopics. Ooh, we got some sirens going out there. The Beatles biopics, I feel very weird about. I don't like the casting. I'm very frustrated that they didn't go with some Liverpudlian unknowns. How hard would that have been? Um, they picked these popular actors, And that's the issue with, like, picking popular actors. You'll never see them as their actual subjects. You're always going to see the actor, particularly, like, Paul Mescal and Barry Keoghan. Is that how you say that? Somebody tell me how to say that. Casting tells us everything, absolutely. And there was something where it's like the boys are gonna do a 6-week Beatle camp, and I'm like, "I don't know, man. I don't know." I just have a hard time. I don't see George Harrison at all in that, and also, I just have an issue with the Beatles height fight of 2024. If you were there, RIP to all of us. People have described the White Album as being a haunted sounding album. It sounds echoey and almost Victorian. I think that the White Album is a very humorous album, actually. When I look back at it now, I think it is like the comedy album. Isn't that weird? But that's how I feel. It's so funny. Like it's got so many funny songs in there. It's actually like, considering how awful the situation was in the background, they do a lot of funny shit. You chat live now? This is my first live chat. I hope none of my comments weirded you out. I'm kind of afraid they did. I don't know. I don't recognize. I will say that if your comments really weird me out, I'll hide you, so you wouldn't actually be showing up here. So you're good. They're the weirdest people, frankly. The weirdest people were in my very beginning. Like, before I had s I'm sure you're fine, Derek, don't worry. Like, before, like, 700 people, somebody found my legal name, somebody found my, like, legal professional journalism email, somebody found my not my professional, my personal Facebook, which I no longer have. You guys, some of the people early on were weird. I haven't had anything like that since, though, so thank God, but it did scare the shit out of me, I have to say. That being said, Abigail DeVoe gave me some tips on how to protect my privacy, so that probably helps. Yeah, I can see that actually. The odd songs that they include are kind of funny. I mean, honestly, like, I still don't understand the hate on Wild Honey Pie. I think it is so funny, but that's just me, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't there when it came out. I just think it's very funny. Yeah, okay, so the Bee Gees covering the Beatles. Okay, you didn't weird me out at all. You're so correct. Seriously, that I'm still kind of falling down the Bee Gees Beetle hole. That's what we'll call it. That's what we'll call it. Oh my god. And it's a lot more these things are very tempting to go down when I'm working on the Live Aid video, and things are so serious and so frustrating and so difficult, and I'm like, "Well, what if I just go back to this?" And it's like, Don't do it. People already know you're working on it. Don't do it." And now I want to get back to the Beatles so badly that I have to keep working on this to get it done with. Falling down the Beetle hole. Yep. My life is basically a series of falling down new Beetle holes. It's difficult, but it is what it is. Okay, just don't include Peter Frampton. Okay. I don't get the reference yet, so we'll see. Um okay, I'm going to have to get off here soon. So, guys, if you have anything to contribute about your experience with Live Aid, what you saw with Live Aid, um, what you like, the impression that Live Aid left on you, if you saw it back when it was going on, particularly on the weight of it being a concert versus it being a fundraiser, go comment on my most recent uh, community post, or send me a message on Instagram. It's This Is Lars Land, and let me know so I can just take it into consideration while I'm working on this video, because it's literally trying to kill me. But yeah, I don't know how often I'm going to be doing lives. Like, this was just completely out of nowhere that something was on my heart of like wanting to just hit live, and I've never done it before. So I was super nervous, and I'm very surprised that I got like 30 people at one point. It's crazy. So I'm very happy that that movie was horrible. Which movie? It's a Real Nowhere Live. Which movie? The Sergeant Pepper movie. Oh, I haven't seen it. Sorry, I had to catch up. Yeah, I know I haven't seen the Sergeant Pepper movie, but yeah, no, this was fun. I don't know, I needed a little bit of a moment to get myself ready to get back into scholarly scientific journals. All right, yeah, the Deadly Live no kidding, the Deadly Live Aid video. That might be Jordy, you might have just given me my title. All right, you guys, I love y'all so much, and y'all come back now, you hear? Okay? Bye.